Gilgamesh, the semi-mythic king of Uruk, is most renowned for being the protagonist of the Epic Gilgamesh, a famous poem written in Babylonia between 2150 and 1400 BCE. The epic poem predates Homer's Iliad and Odyssey by 1,500 years, making it the oldest work of epic literature in existence. Though he appears in a number of Sumerian poetry, Gilgamesh is most known for the Epic of Mesopotamia. Gilgamesh's presence is historically supported by inscriptions attributing to him the construction of Uruk's huge walls, present-day Waqqa, Iraq. These walls serve as the story's tablets, where Gilgamesh first chronicles his search for the meaning of life. In addition to the stories that developed around his reign, he's also named in the Sumerian king list, 2100 BCE, and by well-known historical rulers of his day, such as King Eme-Baragesi of Kish, 2700 BCE. The Gilgamesh epic is the first to fully explore the search for the meaning of life, a topic that has been studied by writers and philosophers from antiquity to the present. After the death of his best friend, Enkidu, the hero king departs from the comforts of his city in search of the mystical figure, Utnapishtim, an eternal life. Even though Gilgamesh is unable to get immortality, the journey itself provides meaning to his life. Therefore, his fear of death is really a fear of meaninglessness. Gilgamesh's mother was the goddess Ninsun, also known as Ninsaman, the Holy Mother and Great Queen, while his father was supposedly the priest king, Lugalbanda, who is mentioned in 2 Sumerian songs about his magical talents that predate Gilgamesh. That being said, Gilgamesh was a god who was reputed to have had superhuman power and lived an incredibly long life, 126 years, according to the Sumerian king list. Most people agree that Gilgamesh was the 5th and actual king of Uruk, ruling around the 26th century BCE. It is believed that his impact was so great that legends about his heavenly rank developed around his actions, culminating in the stories that make up the Epic of Gilgamesh. Subsequent monarchs in Mesopotamia would call upon him and identify his ancestry with their own. Most notably, in order to gain more respect from his subjects, Shugi of U, 2029 to 1922 BCE, who is regarded as the greatest monarch of the U third period, 2047 to 1750 BCE, in Mesopotamia, claimed Gilgamesh as his brother and Lugalbanda and Ninsun as his parents. His name may signify the kinsman is a hero, or, in the words of academic Stephen Michel, the old man is a young man. He was also known as Gilgamesh in Sumerian, Gilgamesh in Akkadian, and Gilgamos in Greek. He is occasionally identified with the shepherd god Dumuzi, Tammuz, a mythical ruler of Uruk, consort of Inanna, Ishtar, and an early dying and resurrecting god figure who is best known in the contemporary age from the Sumerian poem The Descendant of Inanna. Gilgamesh rejects her and suffers from the loss of his companion, while Dumuzi, who was lured by Inanna or Ishtar, suffers by having to spend half the year in the underworld. The text's Akkadian translation was found by archaeologist Austin Henry Laird in the ruins of Ashurbanipal's library at Nineveh in 1849. Laird's journey was a component of a mid-19th century European government and institution program to support trips to Mesopotamia in search of tangible proof of biblical events. Instead, these investigators discovered that the Bible, which was previously believed to be the world's oldest book and to be composed of entirely unique stories, was actually based on much older Sumerian mythology. Similar to this, the Epic of Gilgamesh is based on stories that were probably first transmitted orally and then recorded in writing 700 to 1000 years after the real king's reign. Prior to the discovery of the writings of the poet priestess Enheduanna, 2285 to 2250 BCE, daughter of Sargon of Akkad, 2334 to 2279 BCE, it was believed that the author of the version Laird discovered was Babylonian writer Shin-Leki Onini, wrought 1300 to 1000 BCE. The epic was written centuries after Gilgamesh had become a popular hero. Therefore, Shin-Leki Onini likely had a large number of Sumerian sources from which to construct his story. Inanna and the Hulupu tree, a Sumerian myth from approximately 2900 BCE, has Gilgamesh as her devoted sibling who comes to her rescue. The Sumerian goddess of battle and love, Inanna, plants a tree in her garden with the intention of using it to make a chair and bed in the future. But the tree gets afflicted by an Anzu bird in its branches, a female demon, Lilitu, in its middle, and a serpent in its roots. Whatever she does, Inanna is unable to get rid of the pests on her own, so she turns to the sun deity, Utu Shamash, her brother, for assistance. When Utu rejects, she goes to Gilgamesh, who arrives brandishing a heavy weapon and dispatches the snake. After the demon and Anzu bird have left, Gilgamesh gives Inanna the trunk to use for her bed and chair after stealing the branches for himself. This is believed to be Gilgamesh's first appearance in epic poetry, and the fact that he saves a strong goddess from a precarious situation demonstrates how highly regarded he was, even at this early period. Enkidu, who has returned from Ereshkigal's dark realm after going there to collect his friend's lost belongings, gives Gilgamesh a first-hand account of the afterlife in the poem Gilgamesh. Enkidu and the Netherworld, which is based on older myths such as Inanna and the Hulupu tree. Various interpretations suggest that Enkidu is either a ghost who gives Gilgamesh this vision, leaving him as the only living person who knows what lies beyond death, or that he is just one of two people, the other being the divine Dumuzi, if Enkidu is believed to have survived his voyage to the underworld. The opening line of the Epic of Gilgamesh invites the reader to participate in the tale of the mighty king, who is initially portrayed as a haughty and conceited ruler. He terrorizes his people, sleeps on his subjects' wedding night with their brides, and never stops using force to get his way. The gods chose to make Enkidu, the wild guy, in order to humble him. Gilgamesh recommends that the temple prostitute, Shamhat, be dispatched to tame Enkidu after learning that he's wandering outside of his domain. Shamhat complies. Enkidu, after being domesticated and brought up in a civilized environment, is incensed by tales of Gilgamesh's haughtiness and sets out to confront him in Uruk. The people think that Enkidu and Gilgamesh are equals, yet Enkidu loses an epic battle. He graciously concedes his loss, and the two go on excursions and become great friends. Gilgamesh advises they go to the cedar forest and kill the monster demon Humbaba, demon defined as supernatural creature, not a bad spirit, in order to make his name immortal. Though Gilgamesh is only concerned with himself, Humbaba's stewardship of the forest and his perfect record are reasons for the gods' favor. Humbaba begs for compassion when the two friends vanquish him, but Enkidu orders Gilgamesh to kill him, which he does. When they go back to Uruk, Gilgamesh puts on his best attire in anticipation of celebrating his victory. This draws Ishtar, or Inanna's, attention, and she wants him. Ishtar tries to woo Gilgamesh, but he rejects her, pointing out that all the other men she has dated, including Dumuzi, had unhappy endings. Furious, Ishtar sends her brother-in-law, the Bull of Heaven, to destroy Gilgamesh and Uruk on earth. After the two heroes kill the bull, Enkidu mockingly throws one of its legs at Ishtar. The gods command that he perish for both his harshness against Humbaba and this insult to a divinity. For a while, Enkidu suffers, and after his passing, Gilgamesh experiences intense sadness. After learning of his friend's passing and realizing how mortal he is, he begins to doubt the purpose of existence and the worth of human achievement in the face of eventual extinction. He sobs. Casting away all of his old vanity and pride, Gilgamesh sets out on a quest to find the meaning of life, and finally, some way of defeating death. He travels far, through the mountains and past the Scorpion people, hoping to find Utnapishtim, the man who survived the Great Flood and was rewarded with immortality by the gods. At one point, he meets the tavern keeper, Siduri, who tells him his quest is in vain, and he should accept life as it is and enjoy the pleasures it has to offer. Gilgamesh rejects her advice, however, as he believes life is meaningless if one must eventually lose all that one loves. He is led by Siduri to Ushanabi, the ferryman, who transports him to Utnapishtim and his wife's house by across the waters of death. He is informed by Utnapishtim that he is powerless to help him. He claims that the gods gave him immortality and that he is unable to grant Gilgamesh the same. He nevertheless gives the king 2 chances to live forever. He must first prove his mettle by remaining awake for 6 days and nights, which he fails to do. After that, he's handed a magic plant, which he carelessly leaves on the shore while taking a bath, only for a snake to devour it. After his search is unsuccessful, he asks Ushanabi to return him to Uruk, where he writes his tale on the walls. Gilgamesh became the first epic hero in global literature by defying death via his quest to understand the meaning of life. For everyone who has struggled with grief and finding meaning in life in the face of death, Gilgamesh's sadness and the concerns his friend's death raises are universal. In the end, Gilgamesh is not able to achieve immortality in the tale, but his actions and his memory endure because of it. There has been great discussion about whether the existing story is more early Sumerian or later Babylonian in cultural influence, because the stories that compose the Epic of Gilgamesh existed in oral form long before it was written down. As previously mentioned, the Akkadian writing, Babylonian Shin Leki Unimi, who used original Sumerian source material as the source of the best preserved version of the tale. In reference to this, academic Samuel Noah Kramer states, of the various episodes comprising the Epic of Gilgamesh, several go back to Sumerian prototypes, actually involving the hero Gilgamesh. Even in those episodes, which lack Sumerian counterparts, most of the individual motifs reflect Sumerian mythic and epic sources. In no case, however, did the Babylonian poets slavishly copy the Sumerian material. They so modified its content and molded its form in accordance with their own temper and heritage, that only the bare nucleus of the Sumerian original remains recognizable. As for the plot structure of the epic as a whole, the forceful and fateful episodic drama of the restless, adventurous hero and his inevitable delusionment, it is definitely a Babylonian rather than a Sumerian development and achievement. Summa 270. Like any great work of literature, the meaning of the piece is genuinely unaffected by which civilization contributed more to its composition. In terms of how it portrays the human condition, the Epic of Gilgamesh is not anymore a product of a particular civilization or era than the Mahabharata, Iliad, Odyssey, Shahnameh, or Aeneid. Of course, a literary work is impacted by the culture that produced it, but the best ones, like Gilgamesh, are not limited by these factors. Since the book was originally translated in the 1870s, people have been fascinated by Gilgamesh, and this attraction is still prevalent now. To name just one, a group of archaeologists from Germany say they found his tomb in April 2003. Through the use of contemporary technology and magnetism in and around the former Euphrates riverbed, archaeological excavations have uncovered buildings, structures, and garden enclosures that are mentioned in the Epic of Gilgamesh, including Gilgamesh's grave. The death of Gilgamesh states that when the waters of the Euphrates divided after his death, he was buried there. But over the ages, the persona has taken on a life of his own, so it doesn't matter if the historical king existed. As Gilgamesh is dying at the conclusion of the tale, the narrator states, "The heroes, the wise man, like the new moon, have their waxing and waning. Men will say, who has ever ruled with might and with power like Gilgamesh. As in the dark month, the month of shadows, so without him there is no light. O Gilgamesh, you were given the kingship. Such was your destiny. Everlasting life was not your destiny. Because of this, do not be sad at heart. Do not be grieved or oppressed. He has given you power to bind and to loose, to be the darkness and the light of mankind. Sagas 118. The very way by which Gilgamesh achieves immortality is the story of his failure to fulfill his desire. The epic itself embodies immortality and has acted as a template for all subsequent writings of stories of a similar nature. But Michelle explains that it is much more than that. Like any great literary work, Gilgamesh has a lot to teach us about ourselves, which is part of what makes him so fascinating. It has become a personal testimony for millions of readers worldwide in dozens of languages, expressing love and vulnerability, the pursuit of wisdom and grief and fear of death, possibly more powerfully than any work published after it. However, it also holds special significance in the current world, with its divisive fundamentalisms, each side ardently believing in its own righteousness and engaged in a jihad or crusade against what it views as a malevolent foe. This epic's protagonist is an anti-hero, a Superman, if you will, who is blind to the distinction between strength and conceit. By assaulting a monster before it is ready, he sets himself up for a catastrophe that can only be averted by a torturous journey. A mission that teaches wisdom by demonstrating its own futility. The epic possesses a moral intelligence that is incredibly complex. It makes us re-evaluate our risky beliefs about good and evil by emphasizing balance and refusing to support either the monster or the hero. Gilgamesh inspires optimism by pointing out that although one may not be able to live forever, the decisions one makes in life have an impact on other people. These others could be strangers who continue to be impacted by the enduring tale of the unwillingness to accept a life devoid of purpose, or they could be friends, family, acquaintances, or even strangers who have passed away. As it defines everyone who has ever lived, Gilgamesh's battle against seeming meaninglessness defines him, and his journey never ceases to inspire people who understand how very human that conflict is and always will be.